Hey y'all, I'm Rebel Gaming, the home of the gaming, and before we get into this list, let me quickly go over the rules of this ranking system. Bosses with rematches in A Hat in Time will not be ranked multiple times, as I will only be ranking their hardest fight. On top of this, only full-fledged boss fights will be a part of this list. So no, the Neoxys Metro's secret quote-unquote mini-boss will not be included. Also, what game would y'all like to see covered next in the boss ranking series? Go ahead and comment down below with the answer. And make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so that you don't miss another boss ranking video ever again. But anyways, with all that said y'all, let's begin the ranking.
This lead nowhere. Mafia need to take care of this Mafia style.
Coming up first on this list, the Barrel Battle boss is mindlessly easy to defeat. Lack of difficulty is expected though, because this boss is the very first one that the player fights, showing up in just the second level of this game. When the battle starts, 4 Mafia will come and attack the player one by one, each of which only takes about 6 hits to defeat. After they've all been killed, the Mafia on top of the barrel tower will start throwing spiked barrels at the player for about a minute or so, and then afterwards come down and start attacking the player himself. Now, he does take a few more hits to defeat than the other Mafia enemies, but that barely gives him any more difficulty. Just hit him 3 times, jump on his head, hit him 3 times again, jump on his head, and simply repeat that 1 or 2 more times until he goes bye-bye. If you actually end up dying on this easy as peck boss fight, then you must really suck at this game. Sorry, but it's true. Yeah, that's right. In A Hat in Time, you have a boss battle against an outhouse. This is a legitimate boss battle that exists in A Hat in Time. It really makes you question the game developer's sanity. Anyways, the Toilet of Doom has a lot of different attacks that it will swap through during the many phases of this boss fight. However, despite the variety, all of the attacks that the Toilet of Doom dishes out are very predictable, and as a result of that, they are very easy to dodge as well. This outhouse will start the fight by spitting out green globs of, oh gosh, I don't even want to know what that's made of. Anyways, during this attack you can damage the toilet by throwing an exploding cherry at it, which will cause the boss to jump in the middle of the arena and summon cages that will fly around, damaging the player on contact. In case you haven't noticed already, nothing in this game makes sense. So just don't think about it too hard and you'll be fine, alright? Okay, sweet. After repeating these 2 attacks a few more times, the toilet will move on to its second and easiest phase, where it stays in the same place and continually stomps the ground, causing shockwaves to radiate onto the field. You can damage it in this phase by grappling into more exploding cherries floating above the arena and throwing them at the outhouse. 2 of these hits will move the Toilet of Doom into its third and final phase, where it constantly swaps between attacking with a 1-hit knockout timed Apple Explosive, stomping around the arena even more, and sending even more cages across the arena to hit the player. Even still, all of these attacks in his third phase are extremely easy to foresee and avoid, and in total, the outhouse only takes about 11 hits to defeat. There's not really that much difficulty to beating this boss, and even an inexperienced player should be able to breeze through this fight without too much of a problem.
It is showtime!
At number 4 in this list, we have the battle with Mafia Boss X, the first boss rematch in Death Wish. Despite being the first boss in this mode, he is definitely no wimp. Rather, he is the absolute opposite, as not only is his health bar very high, but the attacks that he throws out, in addition to all of the obstacles falling from the ceiling, make this boss fight incredibly hard. Right as the battle starts, the Mafia boss will charge back and forth across the arena, spinning with his swords and attempting to ram into the player. This is his main attack during the fight, so you want to memorize the pattern since he uses it more often than any other move for the length of his battle. After that, the Mafia Boss X will jump to the other side of the arena and spin in place, shooting out electric shockwaves toward the player in the process. As the fight goes on, random sandbags will start falling from the ceiling during each of the attacks already mentioned. These bags are responsible for easily half of this boss fight's difficulty, as the player has to divide their attention between dodging the powerful attacks of the Mafia boss and dodging the extremely annoying sandbags at the same time. Occasionally, the Mafia boss will also jump off stage and call in waves of sandbags to fall at once, jumping back in and switching to another attack immediately after they drop. Oh, and all these moves and attacks that I just mentioned, they are just in the first phase of this boss, mind you, as the fight only gets harder once the Mafia boss takes 5 hits of damage and transitions into his second phase. Now the Mafia boss X adds a new attack to his moveset, where he jumps around the arena multiple times, sending out his swords as boomerangs in each direction when he lands. Everything else in this second phase is virtually the same, but hit this boss 5 more times and he'll finally move into his third and final phase. During this phase, the new move that I just mentioned only becomes even deadlier, as sandbags will now also fall during this attack, making it much harder to maneuver around the stadium. But the Mafia boss's most powerful attack in this final phase is the electric shockwave attack, as it's been buffed to the extreme, now lasting twice as long and increasing speed in extreme measures halfway throughout the attack. Seeing as how this last phase is the one that lasts the longest, you'll be needing all the luck and skill that you can get to perfectly dodge all of Mafia boss's attacks. Just keep persevering and you'll eventually be able to deliver that final blow and secure that sweet victory over this long, fast-paced, and very difficult boss fight. One bird, two bird, white bird, brown bird. The boss fight against DJ Grooves X and Conductor X is, in my opinion, way harder than the fight with Mafia Boss X, mainly due to how much chaos is happening during the fight. Because both of these bosses act independently from each other, it ends up being extremely hard to track, predict, and avoid everything that DJ Grooves and the Conductor throw at you. To top it all off, the player will have to damage these two birds 33, I repeat, 33 times before they're defeated. During the first phase of the fight, DJ Grooves and the Conductor will quickly dive bomb the player multiple times in a row, and then call movie lights to fall from the ceiling around the player. After this, these two birds will crash party balls on the arena, creating shockwaves, and thrash around the stadium towards the player, dealing damage on impact. Once they take enough damage, these two birds will move on to their second phase, where they'll each start pulling out 5 knives at a time and throwing them at the player. Additionally, they'll rush at the player while wielding the same knives, increasing their speed a lot if left undealt with. When hit enough times to reach their third phase, both the party ball attack and the knife attack will start getting heavy upgrades, as photocopies of these weapons will be created and used against the player. The knife photocopies will change the knife patterns completely. On the flip side, the photocopies of the party balls will act identically to the main one, which can lead to 10, count them, 10 different party balls all dropping on the arena and causing shockwaves, which shakes the camera uncontrollably and makes it extremely hard not to get hit. And it's worth pointing out that since each director has his own randomized attacks during the fight, this can lead to situations where both party balls and knives are being thrown at the player at the same time, which is an incredibly bad situation to be in. Cars will also spawn in the middle of the arena during this phase, crashing into each other in the middle and damaging Hat Kid on impact. Do you see why this boss is so difficult yet? Oh, but don't worry, it only gets harder from here on out, because as soon as these birds enter their fourth phase, the player will now have a bomb strapped to their back, immediately killing them if they don't finish the fight within 3 minutes from there on out. I can't make this stuff up. Add on to this, almost all of the attacks that DJ Grooves and the Conductor used will change once again, as they'll now start running and jumping around the arena, throwing out tons of saw blades in the process of their attacks. Saw blades which have a crazy amount of knockback. This phase lasts the longest out of them all, so you really want to memorize how they throw out the saws and where they're going to land. And finally, once you get these bosses to their 5th and final phase, they will repeat all of the attacks that they used in phase 1, except now you have 10 band owls that will chase you down and mimic your exact movements, sort of like the Shadow Marios from Mario Galaxy 2. This makes the fight harder than you think, as these owls have tripped me up personally so many times. Alright, I think I finally covered every single attack that these two birds use during this excruciating boss fight. And as you can tell, they pull out a lot of crap. With how fast these birds switch attacks, it can be very difficult to keep on your feet and avoid everything they dish out. I just have to say though, this is for sure my favorite battle out of all the Death Wish boss fights, as I feel it reaches the perfect balance of being brutally hard, but still an extremely fun challenge. And the music, man. The track used for this fight has to be one of the best boss themes that I've ever heard. And it keeps edging you on to keep trying and keep trying, eventually pushing through and defeating these two extremely difficult bosses.
You are the bad guy, and I'll show you how this justice system deals with bad guys.
Uh-oh, controversial opinion alert. Even though most of the game's community would disagree, I find Mustache Girl X to be harder than the previous two bosses that we just ranked. With 30 health points in 5 different phases, her stats are definitely comparable to those of the Grooves and Conductor fight, but her attacks are way faster and way more annoying than the former. The start of this boss fight will take place in Mustache Girl X's throne room, where she'll throw timepieces at the player, use the funny Nani teleportation move from that one anime meme, charge head-on toward the player, and every so often hide in the ground and punch up from below. While this first phase is actually pretty easy to overcome, Mustache Girl ramps up the difficulty to the extreme once she takes 5 hits of damage, taking the player to a bitrate destroying hyper seizure zone to continue the fight. In this new arena, Mustache Girl X will start to show her true power, as she will now throw high amounts of black timepieces into the ground and teleport around to fire a giant laser, waving it around the arena and forcing you to jump over it to avoid getting hit. After she takes a couple more hits, Mustache Girl will begin her third phase, and this is where the pain truly begins. Mustache Girl will repeat the attacks mentioned before, but now will teleport away anytime the player gets near her. After enough time has passed, a Mafia Ball will drop onto the arena, which the player will have to kick towards Mustache Girl to deal damage, repeating this an absurd amount of times before phasing her again. And once Mustache Girl does reach her 4th phase, she'll equip a shield which will negate all damage from your attacks, a shield which you can only break if you throw a Dweller Cherry Bomb directly onto it. Throughout this phase, Mustache Girl will continue to use her laser and black timepieces, but now will also stomp around the arena, causing shockwaves and black timepieces to spawn on impact. This move can be exceptionally annoying to maneuver around, especially when you're trying to go for the cherry bomb to throw at the boss as well. And after a few more hits, Mustache Girl will finally enter her 5th and last phase, where after killing half of the bystanders with a laser from up high, she will now use her 3 deadliest attacks but buffed up to the max, going absolutely crazy with her laser, shockwaves, and the timepiece projectiles. And to top it all off, purple timepieces will start rapidly falling from the sky, making the whole freaking arena just filled with crazy attacks that will just kill you again and again and again and again. I mean, you see this death counter, right? You see it, right? Oh, I forgot to mention another main reason why Mustache Girl X ends up as harder than the two bosses already touched upon. With Mafia Boss X and the Two Birds X fights, the player would always get heart pawns at certain parts of the fight, allowing for some major health recovery. But here, with the fight against Mustache Girl X, the player doesn't get any health recovery until the very final phase of the fight, forcing them to perform a near perfect run of the whole fight up to that point if they want a shot at beating it. Mustache Girl X seriously borders on the line between ridiculously difficult and straight up cruel, in my opinion, since her health recovery is very limited, and also because of her just absolutely just gut-wrenching last phase. But if there is a boss in this game that crosses over the line into the pure cruel territory, then it has to be the last boss on this list, which is also, without a shadow of the doubt, the hardest boss in A Hat in Time. Inner Agent 3 has nothing on this boss. At number 1 on this list, we have the boss fight against Snatcher X Plus, which is easily one of the hardest boss fights that I've fought in my gaming career, period. I'm not joking when I say that, because this boss is a pure definition of a 3D bullet hell nightmare. To even get to this boss, you have to unlock the final mission in Death Wish, which forces you to beat all the other 3 buffed up bosses in a row with only 3 lives. With also damage that carries over between each fight, mind you. Fighting each of these bosses is its own ridiculous challenge, but having to take down each one in a row, that is way too much to ask of the player. So, if you're somehow so skilled enough to be able to kill all of the 3 X bosses in a row without dying 3 times, you'll be presented with a fight against Snatcher X Plus. I have to say, this is the first boss fight that I've legitimately hated for being as hard as it is. Now see, at least in the boss fight against Mustache Girl X, part of the enjoyable factor to such a difficult boss was figuring out which combination of hats worked best against her fighting style and with your playing style. There's only 2 out of 6 hats that aren't useful in that fight, so experimenting against her moveset with different hats personally gave me the motivation to press on when I found the perfect combination to use. But with Snatcher X Plus, guess what? You get no hats and no badges against the absolute hardest boss in the game. What makes him so hard, you might ask? Oh, just, literal projectile spam everywhere. Giant lasers that come up from the ground and create shockwaves around the arena. a million timepieces that crash down onto the ground, saw blades that charge straight at the player, stupid falling lanterns, and shadow minions that will chase you. All of this and more is what Snatcher will attack the player with during this fight. And as the fight goes on, all of Snatcher X's attacks will become faster, last longer, and have even greater accuracy. Throughout the whole fight, Snatcher X Plus does only take 8 hits to defeat, but that health bar is huge for a type of battle like this one. Unlike all the other Death Wish bosses on this list, which you could hit during or after any of their attacks, Snatcher X Plus only has 2 different moves after which you can damage him, with all of his other attacks not giving you the opening or the opportunity. Not to mention these attacks are freakishly lengthy, as you can go literal minutes without damaging this boss by only missing 1 or 2 of your attacking opportunities. And if you die 3 times or less during this fight, depending on how many lives you had going into it, you'll be sent all the way back to the start, where, guess what? You have to beat all of the other 3 Death Wish bosses in a row again to get another chance at facing Snatcher X Plus. That, my friends, is purely cruel game design and takes away any motivation for me to actually defeat this boss. And I'll be honest, I haven't beaten Snatcher X Plus, and I have no motivation to. After seeing how unfairly difficult he is, having to go through all 3 other bosses just to get to him is the factor that pushes me over the edge. I'm not willing to waste my time going over the same fights that I've already won just to try and beat this cruel boss, because forcing the player to repeat these same bosses over and over again is so unfair that it's just not worth the effort. Well guys, there you have it. That was all the Hat in Time bosses ranked from easiest to hardest. Do you disagree with my list? Probably. If so, comment down below with how you would have changed it, and make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Bramble Gaming, over and out.